The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Plaza ballroom sparkled like 1,000 stars, but Tion Asfaha felt like she was walking into a lion's den. Her hands trembled as she clutched her small purse, the silk of her emerald dress whispering against her brown skin with each nervous step. She'd received the invitation to the Park family's annual gala 3 days ago, slipped onto her desk with a handwritten note that simply said, "Your presence is requested." What she didn't know was that the invitation was a cruel joke, a bet between Dongmin Park's younger brother Sung-ho and his friends about how uncomfortable they could make the fat secretary feel. Xian pushed open the massive doors, and every conversation in the room died. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward her, and for a heartbeat, she wanted to run. The women in their designer gowns looked her up and down with thinly veiled disgust. The men smirked into their champagne glasses. But Xian had grown up in Eritrea, surviving things these privileged people couldn't imagine, and she'd learned long ago that the only way through fear was straight ahead. She lifted her chin and walked into that silence like she owned it. Dongmin Park stood near the bar, discussing a business merger with 3 executives, when the room went quiet. He turned, irritated by the interruption, and froze. His secretary, the woman he barely noticed during long office hours, stood in the entrance like she'd stepped out of a dream. The dress hugged curves he'd never allowed himself to see, and her natural hair was styled in elegant twists that framed her face. But it wasn't her appearance that stopped his heart. It was the fire in her dark eyes, the way she looked at the staring crowd like she dared them to say something. In that moment, something shifted in his chest, something he couldn't name. Sung-ho appeared at his brother's elbow, grinning wickedly. "Surprised? I invited your little assistant. Thought it would be funny to see her squirm in a room full of real people." He laughed, waiting for Dongmin to join in. Instead, his older brother's jaw tightened, and when Dongmin spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze water. "Get away from me before I forget we share blood." Xian made it halfway across the ballroom before Sung-ho intercepted her, his voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Well, I didn't think you'd actually come. Tell me, did you have to special order that dress? Or do they make them in your size at normal stores?" His friend snickered behind him. Xian's stomach twisted, but she'd dealt with bullies before. She looked Sung-ho directly in the eye and smiled sweetly. "I got it at the same store where they sell manners and decency. You should visit sometime, though I think they might be out of stock in your size." The nearby guests gasped, then a few brave souls laughed. Sung-ho's face turned red, his hand shooting out to grab her arm roughly. "You don't speak to me that way, you..." Dibafu words cut off as Dongmin's hand clamped down on his wrist like iron. "Touch her again, and you'll need surgery to repair the damage." Dongmin's voice was quiet, deadly. He'd crossed the entire ballroom in seconds, moving faster than Xian had ever seen him move. Sung-ho jerked his hand back, shocked. Their father, Chairman Park, watched from across the room with narrowed eyes. Dongmin turned to Xian, and she saw something in his expression she couldn't quite read. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Before she could respond, his hand was on the small of her back, warm through the thin silk, guiding her toward the dance floor. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure he could feel it. "Sir, you don't have to," she started, but he shook his head. "Dongmin. Call me Dongmin." His hand slid around her waist, pulling her closer than was strictly proper, as a waltz began. "And I want to." They moved together, and Xian was acutely aware of everywhere their bodies touched. His cologne was subtle, expensive, mixing with something uniquely him that made her head spin. "I'm sorry about my brother," Dongmin said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. "He's cruel because he's weak. You handled him better than most." Xian looked up, surprised to find his face inches from hers, his dark eyes intense. "I've handled worse." Her voice came out breathier than she intended. "I'm sure you have," he murmured. and something in his tone made heat spread through her body. "You're stronger than any of these people. I should have noticed before." The song ended, but Dongmin didn't let go. They stood in the center of the dance floor, the crowd watching, whispers rising like a tide around them. Xian knew she should step back, remember her place, but her body refused to listen. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. Dongmin's thumb traced a small circle on her waist, a gesture so intimate it made her breath catch. "Because when you walked through those doors, I finally saw what I'd been too blind to see for 2 years." His eyes dropped to her lips. "And now I can't stop seeing it." Chairman Park's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Dongmin, my office. Now." The elderly man stood at the edge of the ballroom, his face carved from stone. Dongmin's jaw clenched, but he slowly released Xian, his fingers trailing along her arm as he stepped back. "Don't leave," he told her, his eyes holding hers. "Promise me." Xian nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him walk away, feeling the loss of his warmth like a physical ache. Around her, the whispers grew louder, and she realized that everything had just changed. Xian retreated to the balcony, needing air, needing to think. The night breeze cooled her flushed skin as she gripped the marble railing. What had just happened? Her boss, the man she'd watched from a distance for 2 years, had looked at her like she was the only woman in the room, like he wanted to devour her. She pressed her hand to her, racing heart, trying to calm down. This was dangerous. Men like Dongmin Park didn't really see women like her. This was probably just some strange impulse he'd regret by morning. "He's going to get bored, you know." The voice made Xian spin around. A stunning woman in a white gown emerged from the shadows, her smile sharp as glass. "I'm Veronica Hayes, Dongmin's ex-girlfriend. Well, ex for now." She looked Xian over with obvious disdain. He does this sometimes, gets fascinated by something different, something exotic. But he always comes back to his own kind. Women who fit into his world. Veronica's laugh was cruel. "Did you really think one dance meant something? Honey, you're a novelty, a flavor of the week. Don't embarrass yourself by believing it's more." Before Xian could respond, Dongmin appeared in the balcony doorway. "Veronica, leave." His voice was flat, final. Veronica's confident smile faltered. "Dongmin, I was just—" He cut her off. "Leave, now, or I'll have security escort you out." Veronica's face twisted with anger, but she swept past him, pausing to whisper something Xian couldn't hear. Dongmin didn't even flinch. When they were alone, he crossed to Xian in 3 long strides. Whatever she said, it was a lie. Veronica can't stand that I've moved on. Xian shook her head, trying to clear it. "Moved on to what?" "Sir, I mean Dongmin. I don't understand what's happening." She wrapped her arms around herself. "A few hours ago, I was just your secretary, someone you barely looked at. Now you're defending me to your family, dancing with me in front of everyone, and your ex-girlfriend is threatening me. I need you to tell me what you want, because I can't afford to misunderstand. I can't afford to hope for something that isn't real." Dongmin moved closer, backing her gently against the railing. His hands came up to frame her face, thumbs stroking her cheeks with devastating tenderness. "I want everything," he said, his voice rough. "I want to know what makes you laugh. I want to hear about your life, your dreams, the things that made you strong enough to walk into that room tonight. I want to take you to dinner and actually talk to you instead of discussing quarterly reports. And then," he leaned in until his lips were almost touching hers, "I want to kiss you until we both forget our own names." Xian's breath stopped. "You don't mean that. You can't." But even as she said it, her hands came up to rest on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palms. "I do," Dongmin insisted. "I know it's sudden. I know I sound crazy. But I've spent 2 years working beside you, and I was so focused on keeping things professional that I never let myself really look. Tonight, I looked, and I can't go back to not seeing you. His forehead rested against hers. Tell me I'm not alone in this. Tell me you feel it too. She did. God help her, she did. The attraction that had simmered unacknowledged for months suddenly blazed between them like wildfire. This is a terrible idea, Xian whispered, but her fingers curled into his shirt. Probably, Dongmin agreed, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was soft at first, questioning, giving her a chance to pull away. But Xian had never been good at taking the safe path. She kissed him back, rising on her toes, her arms winding around his neck. Dongmin made a low sound in his throat and pulled her flush against him, the kiss deepening, becoming hungry, desperate. Years of denied want poured into that kiss, and when they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Come to dinner with me tomorrow, Dongmin said against her lips. Let me do this right. Let me court you properly. Xian laughed, the sound shaky. Your family is going to lose their minds. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile she'd only seen a handful of times. Let them. I've spent my whole life doing what they expected. For once, I'm going to do what I want. And I want you. He kissed her again, softer this time, a promise. Say yes, Xian. Take a chance on me. She knew she should say no, knew this would complicate everything, possibly destroy her career and her life in Philadelphia. But standing there in his arms, feeling wanted and seen for the first time in years, Xian couldn't make herself care about the sensible choice. Yes, she breathed. Yes. Dongmin's smile was brilliant, and he kissed her once more before stepping back reluctantly. I need to handle some things with my father, but I'm taking you home tonight, and tomorrow we're going to start figuring out what this is between us. Okay? Xian nodded, still dazed. Dongmin squeezed her hand once, then disappeared back into the ballroom. She stood alone on the balcony, touching her lips, wondering if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Inside, she could hear raised voices, Chairman Park's angry tone mixing with Dongmin's calm responses. The party was ending, guests leaving in clusters, their shocked whispers following them. Xian's phone buzzed, a text from her roommate, Lebna. Girl, you're trending on social media. What did you do? Xian closed her eyes. There was no going back now. Whatever happened next, her quiet life was over. Dongmin kept his promise. The next evening, he picked Qian up in his personal car, not the company vehicle with its driver. He wore jeans and a simple black shirt, looking younger and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. Where are we going? Qian asked as they drove through Philadelphia's streets. She'd chosen a simple yellow dress, suddenly shy now that the magic of the gala had faded into daylight reality. Dongmin glanced at her, his hand reaching across to tangle with hers. Somewhere we can actually talk without my world watching. Trust me? They ended up at a small Ethiopian restaurant in South Philadelphia, tucked away on a side street. Xian stared in surprise. How did you find this place? Dongmin looked almost embarrassed. I asked Lebna. I know it's not Eritrean, but she said the food was close enough, and you'd feel comfortable here. Was that presumptuous? Xian felt warmth spread through her chest. He'd put thought into this, tried to make her feel at home. It's perfect, she said softly. Inside, the owner recognized her and raised an eyebrow at her companion, but said nothing. They were seated in a private corner, and for the first time, they weren't boss and employee. They were just two people sharing a meal. The conversation flowed easier than Xian expected. Dongmin asked about her childhood in Asmara, her journey to America at 18, the family she'd left behind. She found herself telling him things she rarely shared, about her mother's strength, her father's quiet wisdom, the siblings she sent money to every month. I grew up with very little, she admitted, but we had love. We had each other. Coming here was like landing on another planet where everyone had so much, but seemed so empty. Dongmin listened intently, his fingers absently stroking her palm. That's exactly how I feel in my world, surrounded by everything, connected to nothing. Tell me about you, Xian urged, not the corporate air, the real you. Dongmin was quiet for a moment, considering. I don't know if there is a real me anymore. I've been groomed to take over the family business since I was 5. Every choice was made for me. What to study, who to befriend, who to date. His jaw tightened. Veronica was my father's choice. Beautiful, connected, appropriate. I tried to love her for 3 years because it was expected. But I felt nothing. Nothing real, anyway. And now? Xian asked, her heart beating faster. Dongmin's eyes met hers, intense and honest. Now I feel everything. It's terrifying. He raised her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I don't know how to do this, Chun. I've never dated someone my family didn't approve first. I've never wanted someone so badly it actually hurts. You walked into my life in a green dress, and suddenly everything I thought I knew stopped making sense. His thumb brushed over her racing pulse. Tell me I'm not scaring you away. You're definitely scaring me, Xian admitted. But I'm still here. She bit her lip. We should talk about work, though. This can't be a secret forever. And when people find out, it's going to cause problems. I'm your employee. There are rules about this kind of thing. Dongmin nodded slowly. You're right. So, here's what I'm thinking. You're brilliant with accounts and analysis. You've caught mistakes I've missed, spotted opportunities others didn't see. I want to promote you to consultant. Have you work with all the department heads instead of just me. It's a position you've earned on merit, and it removes the direct reporting issue. Xian stared at him. You're serious? Her mind spun. Dongmin, people will say I slept my way into a promotion. They'll say you're playing favorites because we're... She gestured between them, unsure what to call this thing blooming between them. He leaned forward. Let them talk. You've deserved recognition for a year. I was too blind to push for it before, but I'm pushing now. Take the job because you're good enough, not because of anything between us. Though I won't lie and say I don't like the idea of you having more independence and less reason for people to whisper. His smile turned wicked. Plus, if you're not my secretary anymore, I can do this at the office. Before Xian could ask what this meant, Dongmin stood and pulled her up, guiding her behind a decorative screen that partially hid them from the main restaurant. His hand slid around her waist, pulling her against him as his mouth found hers. This kiss was different from the one on the balcony. Slower, deeper, thorough. Xian melted into him, her fingers threading through his hair, as his hands explored her back, her sides, pulling her impossibly closer. When his lips trailed down her neck, she gasped, her head falling back. Dongmin, she breathed, and he groaned against her skin. Say my name like that again, and we're not making it through dinner, he warned, his voice rough. He forced himself to step back, both of them breathing hard. His hair was messed from her fingers, his lips swollen, and Xian thought she'd never seen anything more attractive. We should eat, he said, sounding like he was trying to convince himself. They returned to their table, but the air between them felt charged, electric. Every accidental touch sent sparks through Xian's body. By the time dinner ended, the tension was almost unbearable. Dongmin drove her home, his hand possessively on her thigh, and walked her to her apartment door. I want to come in, he said honestly. But if I do, I'm not leaving until morning, and I want to do this right. I want you to know this isn't just physical for me. He cupped her face, though it's definitely physical too. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring. Go out with me again tomorrow, and the day after. Let me show you I'm serious about this, about us. Xian nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him walk away, then leaned against her door, touching her lips, smiling like a fool. The next 2 weeks were a blur of stolen moments and secret dates. Dongmin took her to art museums and jazz clubs, tiny restaurants, and midnight drives. They talked for hours, learning each other's rhythms and quirks. At work, Xian moved into her new role, and while some coworkers whispered, her competence quickly silenced most criticism. But keeping their relationship secret was harder than either anticipated. Dongmin found excuses to stop by her office, his hand lingering on her shoulder, a beat too long. Xian caught herself staring at him during meetings, remembering how his hands felt on her body. It all came to a head one late evening when they were alone in the office, going over quarterly projections. Dongmin sat beside her at the conference table, his thigh pressed against hers, making concentration impossible. "You're not paying attention," Xian said, trying to focus on the spreadsheet. "I'm paying attention," Dongmin countered, his hand sliding onto her knee beneath the table. "Just not to the numbers." His fingers traced patterns on her inner thigh, making her breath catch. "Dongmin, we're at work." But her protest was weak, her body already responding to his touch. "It's after midnight. Everyone's gone." His lips found her neck. "And I've been wanting to do this all day." Xian's resolve crumbled. She turned, capturing his mouth with hers. The kiss immediately heated. Dongmin lifted her onto the conference table, stepping between her legs, his hand sliding under her skirt. "We shouldn't," Xian gasped, even as she arched into him. "We really shouldn't." But her fingers were already working the buttons of his shirt, desperate to feel his skin. "Tell me to stop," Dongmin challenged, his hands roaming higher. "Tell me you don't want this." But she couldn't, because it would be a lie. She wanted him with an intensity that scared her. Thunder cracked outside, rain suddenly pounding against the windows. The storm seemed to break whatever restraint they'd been holding onto. They came together urgently, desperately, learning each other's bodies in the flash of lightning. Afterward, they lay on the floor of his office, their clothes scattered, hearts racing. Dongmin pulled her against his chest, pressing kisses into her hair. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured. "Come home with me. I don't want to let you go." Xian knew it was risky, knew they were crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. But wrapped in his arms, she couldn't bring herself to care. "Okay," she whispered. "Take me home." His penthouse was sleek and modern, all glass and steel with a view of the city lights. But what struck Xian was how empty it felt, how impersonal. Like a hotel room, not a home. Dongmin seemed to read her thoughts. "I know, it's cold. I've never really cared about making it warm before." He pulled her close. "Maybe you could help me change that. Leave some of your things here. Make it feel lived in." Xian's heart stuttered. "Dongmin, we've been together 2 weeks. Isn't that moving too fast?" He kissed her forehead. "Probably. But I already know you're not temporary for me. I want you in my space, in my life. I want to wake up next to you." That night, they made love slowly, thoroughly, learning every inch of each other. Dongmin was tender and passionate, attentive to every sound she made, every shiver. Xian had never felt so cherished, so desired. In the early morning hours, she lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, and let herself imagine a future she'd never dared dream of. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered warnings. This was too perfect, too fast. Something had to give. She pushed the thoughts away and burrowed, closer to Dongmin's warmth, choosing to live in this moment rather than worry about tomorrow. The next morning, they were eating breakfast in his kitchen when his phone rang. Chairman Park's name flashed on the screen. Dongmin answered, his expression guarded. "Father." Xian couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Dongmin's face harden. "No, I'm not discussing this with you. My personal life is not up for debate." A pause. "You don't get to make that decision." Another pause, longer this time. "Fine, I'll be there this afternoon. Alone." He hung up, his jaw clenched. "He knows," Dongmin said quietly. About us. Someone told him we've been seen together. He wants to talk. Xian's stomach dropped. Maybe you should listen to what he has to say. Dongmin turned to her, fierce. No. I know what he's going to say. That you're inappropriate, that this relationship is beneath me, that I'm embarrassing the family. And I don't care. He pulled her into his arms. You're the first real thing I've ever had. I'm not giving you up because my father is stuck in the past. But Xian saw the worry in his eyes, felt the tension in his body. She kissed him softly. Go talk to him. Hear him out. I'm not going anywhere. Though as she said it, she couldn't shake the feeling that forces beyond their control were already working to tear them apart. The meeting with Chairman Park went exactly as badly as Dongmin expected. His father had summoned him to the main family estate, a sprawling property that always made Dongmin feel like he was suffocating. They sat in the formal study, surrounded by portraits of ancestors who seemed to judge from their frames. This foolishness ends now, Chairman Park stated without preamble. Your secretary, this African girl, I don't care what's happened, but it stops today. I've already arranged for her to be transferred to our Atlanta office with a generous severance package. She'll be gone by the end of the week. Dongmin's hands clenched. You had no right to do that without consulting me. And her name is Xian. You'll use it. His father's eyes narrowed. I have every right. I own this company, and I won't let you destroy everything we've built for some passing infatuation. Son, be reasonable. Women like her, they're fine for a distraction. But they're not for marrying. They're not for building a legacy with. I've been patient, letting you sow your wild oats. But this has gone too far. People are talking. Your reputation is at stake. My reputation? Dongmin laughed bitterly. Or yours? Because I don't care what people say, father. For the first time in my life, I'm happy. Xian sees me, the real me, not the heir, or the company, or the money. She makes me want to be better. And I love her. The words came out before he could stop them, but once said, he realized they were true. He loved her. Completely. The realization steadied him. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to cancel that. Transfer. You're going to accept that Xian is in my life. Or I walk away from all of this. Chairman Park's face purpled. You would choose some nobody over your family? Over your duty? Dongmin stood. She's not a nobody. And yes, I would, without hesitation. I've given you 32 years of my life, father. I've done everything you asked, been everything you wanted. But I won't give you this. I won't give you her. He walked toward the door. You have until tomorrow to reverse the transfer. If you don't, I'll resign and take my shares with me. Try running the company without my third of the voting rights. He left his father sputtering, feeling both liberated and terrified. He'd just declared war on his own family. He drove straight to Xian's apartment, needing to see her, to hold her. But when Lebna opened the door, her face was strained. She's in her room. Dongmin, something happened. Someone came by earlier. His heart dropped. He found Xian sitting on her bed, staring at a manila envelope. Tears streaked her face. Xian. He knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands. Baby, what's wrong? She handed him the envelope. Inside were photos. Him with Veronica, taken 2 years ago when they were still together. But they'd been edited, manipulated to look recent, intimate. There were also printed social media posts, fake accounts claiming he'd been cheating, using Xian. Veronica came here, Xian said, her voice flat. She brought these. She said you've been playing me. That rich men like you don't actually date women like me. You just use us. She said you made a bet with your friends about how long it would take to get me into bed. She had text messages, Dongmin, screenshots of conversations. Xian looked up at him with devastated eyes. Tell me they're fake. Please tell me this is all lies. Dong-min felt rage, unlike anything he'd ever experienced. They're fake, all of it. Xian, I would never… But she pulled away from him. How do I know? We've been together less than a month. I barely know you, not really. Maybe Veronica's right. Maybe I'm just a fool who believed a fairy tale. Xian stood, wrapping her arms around herself. Your father offered me money to leave today. A lot of money. Enough to bring my whole family here, to set them up for life. He said I should take it and go before I get hurt worse. Maybe he's right. Maybe I should cut my losses. Dong-min felt panic claw at his chest. No! Xian, no! You can't believe… But she shook her head. I need time. I need to think. Please, just go. I'm not leaving you like this, Dong-min insisted. Xian, I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. I've never said that to anyone before, and I mean it with everything I am. But Xian's expression didn't change. Love? After 3 weeks? Dong-min, people don't fall in love that fast. Not real love. You're infatuated, or you feel guilty, or this is some rebellion against your father. But it's not love. Her words cut deeper than any knife. I think you should leave. I need to be alone. Dong-min wanted to argue, to make her understand, but he saw the walls going up in her eyes. Pushing now would only make things worse. I'll go, he said quietly. But I'm not giving up on us. Whatever Veronica told you, whatever fake evidence she manufactured, will prove it's false. I'll hire investigators. Xian cut him off. Don't. Just don't. Give me space, Dong-min. If what we have is real, it'll survive me taking a few days to think. He wanted to argue that every moment apart was agony, but he forced himself to nod. Okay, take your time. But know that I'm here. Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Xian? I do love you. That's not going to change, whether you believe it or not. After he left, Dong-min sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Veronica had declared war, and she was fighting dirty. He pulled out his phone and made a call. I need information on Veronica Hayes. Everything. Financial records, phone records, anyone she's been in contact with recently. I don't care what it costs. If she wanted to play games, he'd show her exactly what happened when someone threatened something he loved. But even as he made plans, fear gnawed at him. What if Xian didn't come back? What if Veronica's poison worked? 3 days passed in agony. Xian didn't answer his calls or texts. At work, she was professional, but distant, conducting business through email and avoiding him completely. Dong-min felt like he was losing his mind. He'd never needed anyone before, never felt like he couldn't breathe without someone's presence. It was humbling and terrifying. His investigator finally came through with evidence that the photos and texts were fabricated, created by a graphic designer Veronica had paid. But he couldn't get Xian to talk to him long enough to show her the proof. It was Lebna who finally helped. She cornered him in the parking garage after work. She loves you too, you know. She's just scared. Xian has been hurt before, by people she trusted. Her ex back in Eritrea, he used her for money and status, then left her when someone better came along. She came to America alone with nothing, and she's built everything herself. The idea that she might lose it all again, that she might be wrong about you, it's paralyzing her. Lebna studied him. Are you serious about her? Because if you are not, if there's even a chance, you'll wake up one day and realize this was a mistake. Walk away now. She'll survive. But if you drag it out, if you let her fall deeper and then leave, it'll destroy her. I'm not leaving, Dong-min said fiercely. Ever. I'll wait as long as she needs. I'll prove myself however she requires. But I'm not walking away. Lebna nodded slowly. Then you need to fight for her. Grand gestures don't work on Xian. She's too practical. But consistency does. Show up, every day. Be there even when she pushes you away. Eventually, she'll believe you mean it. She handed him a key. I'm staying at my boyfriend's place tonight. Xian will be home alone. Use this wisely. Dongmin showed up at Xian's apartment with takeout from the Ethiopian restaurant, where they'd had their first date, and the evidence clearing his name. When she opened the door, surprise flashed across her face. "I know you said you needed space," Dongmin said before she could speak. "And I've tried to give it to you. But I can't let Veronica's lies stand between us without at least showing you the truth. After that, if you still want me to leave, I will. But please, just give me 10 minutes. Something in his expression must have convinced her, because she stepped aside, letting him in. They sat on her small couch, and Dongmin showed her everything. The investigator's report proving the photos were edited. Bank records showing payments to the graphic designer. Phone logs proving Veronica had orchestrated everything. "She's obsessed," he explained quietly. "She can't accept that I've moved on, that I've found something real with you. I'm getting a restraining order against her. And I've arranged for security to watch your apartment. I'm not taking chances with your safety." Xian stared at the documents, tears rolling down her face. "I'm sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have—" Dongmin pulled her into his arms. "No, don't apologize. Veronica was convincing, and you barely know me. I haven't given you enough time to build trust. But I will." He tilted her face up. "I meant what I said. I love you. And I know it's fast. I know it sounds crazy. But I've never been more sure of anything. You're it for me, Xian. The last woman I'll ever love." His thumb brushed away her tears. "But I understand if you need more time. You're not ready to say it back. I can wait. I'll wait as long as you need." Xian kissed him, pouring everything she felt into it. Relief, love, longing, need. "I love you too," she whispered against his lips. "I've been terrified to admit it, but I do. I love you so much it scares me." Dongmin made a sound between a laugh and a sob, crushing her against him. They kissed desperately, making up for days apart. Hands roamed, clothes fell away, and they came together with an urgency born of fear and relief. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Xian's head on his chest, Dongmin whispered, "Don't shut me out again. Please. Whatever happens, we face it together." But even as she agreed, even as they held each other close, neither knew that Veronica's schemes were just beginning. Rejected and humiliated by Dongmin's restraining order, she'd found a new ally in Sung-ho. Together, they were planning something that would test Dongmin and Xian's love in ways neither could imagine. In a dark bar across town, Veronica raised her glass to Sung-ho. "To destroying your brother's happiness," she toasted. Sung-ho clinked his glass against hers, his smile vicious. "And getting what we both deserve." Chairman Park's response to Dongmin's ultimatum was swift and brutal. Within a week, he'd frozen Dongmin's personal accounts, citing company policy about executives in inappropriate relationships. He called an emergency board meeting, attempting to have Dongmin removed from his position as chief operating officer. The vote failed, but barely, and the message was clear. Step in line or be destroyed. Dongmin moved out of his penthouse, which was owned by the family company, and into a modest apartment with Xian. His mother, Ji-yeon, refused to speak to him, returning his calls with icy silence. "Maybe we should stop," Xian said one morning as they drank coffee in their new place. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from stress and lack of sleep. "Your family is tearing itself apart because of me. Dongmin, is this really worth it?" He set down his cup, taking her hands. "Don't do that. Don't let them make you think you're the problem. They're doing this because they're controlling and can't accept that I've made my own choice. If it wasn't you, it would be something else. This confrontation has been building for years." He kissed her knuckles. "Besides, this apartment is worth it. Our life together is worth it. You're worth everything." Work became a battlefield. Sung-ho, sensing opportunity, began actively sabotaging Dong Min's projects. Important documents went missing. Clients were mysteriously contacted with lies about Dong Min's competence. Board members were wined and dined, poisoned against him. Meanwhile, a new player entered the game. Haiwan Chu, Dong Min's childhood friend, returned from studying abroad in London. She was beautiful, brilliant, and came from a family even wealthier than the Parks. Chairman Park invited her to dinner, making his intentions obvious. "You and Haiwan were always meant to end up together," he told his son. "Stop this foolishness with your secretary and marry someone appropriate." Haiwan played her role perfectly. She appeared sympathetic to Dong Min's rebellion, complimenting Xian when they met at company events. "I think it's wonderful that Dong Min found someone who makes him happy," she told Xian with a warm smile. "Don't let his family intimidate you. Love is worth fighting for." Xian wanted to believe her, but something felt off. There was a calculation in Haiwan's eyes that didn't match her friendly words. When she mentioned this to Dong Min, he brushed it off. "Haiwan and I grew up together. She's like a sister. She's probably just trying to help." But Haiwan's help came with poison. She started spending time with Xian, taking her to lunch, listening to her worries. Slowly, carefully, she planted seeds of doubt. "Has Dong Min told you about his trust fund? The one he gets access to when he marries someone his father approves of? It's worth about $50 million. Of course, if he marries you, he'll never see that money." She said it casually, like it was common knowledge. Xian's stomach churned. Dong Min had never mentioned money. "Do you know about his other properties? The vacation homes, the investments? All in the family trust. All contingent on him playing by their rules." Xian tried to push the comments away, but they festered. She started noticing things. How Dong Min never talked about their future concretely. How he'd grown quieter as the pressure from his family mounted. Late one night, unable to sleep, she found him on the balcony of their apartment, staring at the city lights. "Tell me the truth," she said softly. "About the money you're giving up for me. About what this relationship really costs you." Dong Min sighed. "Haiwan told you. It wasn't a question. She's right. There's a trust fund, property, investments, all gone if I don't marry someone from an approved list of families. It's a lot of money." "How much?" Xian pressed. When he told her, she felt sick. "Dong Min, that's your future, your security. How can you just give that up?" He turned to her, frustrated. "Because money isn't worth anything if I'm miserable. I've had wealth my entire life, Diane, and it never made me happy. You do. Building a life with you does. I don't care about the trust fund." But Doyan saw the strain on his face, the weight of what he was sacrificing. "Your family is never going to accept me. We're going to fight them forever. Is that really the life you want?" "Yes," Dong Min said firmly. "If it means being with you, yes. Why are you questioning this now? What did Haiwan say to you?" Xian shook her head, suddenly exhausted. "It doesn't matter. I'm going to bed." She left him on the balcony, her mind churning. The doubts Haiwan had planted were growing roots. What if she was being selfish? What if she was ruining Dong Min's life? That night, they slept on opposite sides of the bed, miles apart despite touching. It was the first crack in their foundation, and Haiwan watched from afar, satisfied. The plan was working. Things got worse. Sung-ho leaked confidential information about one of Dong Min's projects to a competitor, costing the company millions. Chairman Park blamed Dong Min, using it as evidence of his incompetence and distraction. Several board members who'd supported Dong Min switched sides. At home, the tension between Dong Min and Xian grew. They fought more, small disagreements escalating into larger arguments about money, family, and sacrifice. "I didn't ask you to give up everything for me," Xian shouted during one heated fight. "You made that choice without even discussing what it would mean." "What did you want me to do?" Dong Min shot back. "Abandon you to make my father happy? Choose money over love?" His voice dripped with hurt and frustration. You said you loved me. Was that only true when it was easy? Xian flinched. That's not fair. You know I love you. But love isn't always enough, Dongmin. Sometimes practical matters. Sometimes. She broke off, realizing what she was saying. These weren't her thoughts. These were Haiwan's words coming out of her mouth. I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. But the damage was done. They went to bed, angry. Dongmin sleeping on the couch. Ji Yan finally agreed to meet with Xian, but only to tell her to leave. They met at a cafe, and Chairman Park's wife was every bit as cold as Xian expected. You seem like a nice girl, Ji Yan said without warmth, but you're destroying my son. He's losing his inheritance, his position in the company, his family's respect. All for what? A relationship that will never work? You don't belong in our world, and you never will. The kind thing would be to end this before you both get hurt worse. She slid an envelope across the table. There's a check inside. Enough money to start over anywhere you want. Take it and go. If you truly love my son, you'll set him free. Xian left the envelope unopened on the table and walked out. But the encounter shook her more than she wanted to admit. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about Ji Yan's words. Was she being selfish? Was her love for Dongmin actually hurting him? When Dongmin came home late from another brutal meeting with his father, they finally talked honestly. I'm scared, Xian admitted. Scared that one day, you'll wake up and resent me for everything you gave up. Scared that we're fighting so hard to be together that we're forgetting to ask if we should be together. Dongmin pulled her close. I could never resent you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. But even as he said it, Xian felt his exhaustion, saw the new lines stress had carved into his face. They made love that night, but it felt different. Desperate, like they were both trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. Afterward, Xian lay awake, Dongmin's arm around her waist, and let herself cry silently. She loved him so much it physically hurt. But was love really enough against the weight of his entire family and future? The final blow came at the company's quarterly gala. Haiwan had convinced Xian to attend, saying it was important to show unity. But it was a trap. During the party, Haiwan made sure Xian witnessed her dancing with Dongmin, their bodies close, their history obvious. She made sure Xian overheard her telling a group of executives about how she and Dongmin had been promised to each other as children. Of course, that was before his current distraction, Haiwan said, her tone implying Xian was temporary. But these things pass. He'll come back to where he belongs eventually. Xian felt something break inside her. She left the gala without telling Dongmin, taking a cab back to their apartment. She looked around at the life they'd built in 2 short months and realized she couldn't do this anymore. Not because she didn't love him, but because she loved him too much to watch him destroy himself for her. When Dongmin came, home, panicked because she'd disappeared, he found her packing. What are you doing? His voice was tight with fear. Xian, talk to me. I can't do this, she said, tears streaming down her face. I love you, Dongmin. But your family is right. We're from different worlds, and forcing them together is destroying both of us. You're losing everything because of me. Your money, your family, your position. And I'm losing myself, constantly wondering if I'm good enough, if I belong, if I'm being selfish by staying. She zipped her suitcase. I need space, real space, not just a few days. I need to figure out if what we have is strong enough to survive this, or if we're just too different. No. Dongmin blocked the door. No, you don't get to run. We fight through this together. That's what love means, Xian. It means not giving up when things get hard. But Xian shook her head. Sometimes love means knowing when to let go. Sometimes it means protecting the person you love from yourself. She touched his face gently. If we're meant to be together, we'll find our way back. But right now, I need to breathe. And so do you." She kissed him softly, tasting her own tears. "Please don't make this harder than it already is." Dongmin wanted to fight, wanted to lock the door and refused to let her leave. But he saw the pain in her eyes, the genuine belief that she was doing the right thing. Slowly, he stepped aside. Tso-an walked out, each step feeling like death, but she forced herself to keep moving. Behind her, she heard Dongmin's broken sound, somewhere between a sob and a shout. She wanted to run back, to take it all back, but she kept walking. Lebna was waiting in her car downstairs. They'd planned this, knowing Dongmin would try to stop her. As they drove away, Xian looked back once. Dongmin stood on the balcony, watching her leave, and even from a distance, she could see his devastation. "I did the right thing," Xian told Lebna, trying to convince herself. Her friend squeezed her hand. "I know, honey. I know." But as they drove through the Philadelphia night toward Richmond, where Lebna's cousin lived, Xian felt like she'd left her heart behind. In the apartment, Dongmin stood alone, the silence crushing. His phone rang. "Hi, Juan. I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. Do you want company?" For the first time, Dongmin heard the false sympathy, the calculated timing. "You did this. You poisoned her against me." Haiwan's mask slipped for just a moment. "I helped her see reality. She was never going to fit into your life, Dongmin. Better she realized it now than after you'd wasted more time." Dongmin hung up, fury and grief warring in his chest. He'd lost Xian, but he'd gained clarity. Everyone who'd claimed to care about him had been working to destroy his happiness. His family, his childhood friend, they all saw him as a pawn in their games. Well, no more. If Xian thought leaving would protect him, she was wrong. He was going to fight for both of them, whether she wanted him to or not. He pulled out his phone and started making calls. To investigators, to lawyers, to every contact who owed him a favor. If his family wanted war, they'd get it. But he was going to win Xian back first, whatever it took. Richmond, Virginia felt like another planet to Xian. Lebna's cousin had a small house in a quiet neighborhood where nobody knew about Park family drama or Korean business empires. For 3 days, Xian stayed in the guest room, crying until she had no tears left. Her phone buzzed constantly with Dongmin's calls and texts, each one breaking her heart a little more. "Please come home. We can fix this. I love you. Don't give up on us." But she didn't answer. She'd made her choice, and she had to stick with it, even if it was killing her. On the 4th morning, Xian woke up nauseous. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick. Lebna stood in the doorway, her expression knowing. "How late is your period?" Xian's stomach dropped. In all the chaos, she hadn't noticed. "About 2 weeks," she whispered. Lebna handed her a pregnancy test. "Take this. Better to know for sure." 10 minutes later, Xian stared at 2 pink lines, her world tilting on its axis. Pregnant. She was carrying Dongmin's baby. Her hand went to her still flat stomach, emotions crashing over her. Terror, joy, confusion, love. "What are you going to do?" Lebna asked gently. Xian's mind raced. A baby changed everything. Or did it? Dongmin deserved to know, but telling him would bring him running back, and she'd left specifically to give him freedom. But keeping this secret felt wrong. "I don't know," Xian admitted. "I need time to think." That night, she lay in bed, one hand on her stomach, imagining a tiny person growing inside her, a piece of her and Dongmin, created from their love. The thought made her ache with longing. Maybe she'd made a mistake leaving. Maybe love was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. Meanwhile in Philadelphia, Dongmin was unraveling. He threw himself into investigating everyone who'd worked against them. His team discovered that Hye-won had been systematically manipulating Xian for weeks, feeding her doubts and insecurities. They found evidence that Sung-ho had been embezzling from the company, using the chaos around Dongmin's relationship as cover. But the worst discovery came from Veronica. She hadn't given up. In fact, she'd escalated. Working with Sung Ho, she'd been planning something that made Dongmin's blood run cold. They were going to have Sion deported, claiming she'd violated her visa terms by working without proper authorization. It was a lie, but the paperwork looked legitimate. Dongmin confronted Sung Ho in his office, slamming the fake immigration documents onto his desk. "You've gone too far. This isn't just about me anymore. You're trying to destroy an innocent woman's life." Sung Ho leaned back, smirking. "Innocent? Brother, she seduced you to climb the social ladder. I'm just helping her return to where she belongs." Dongmin's fist connected with Sung Ho's jaw before he consciously decided to throw the punch. His brother stumbled back, shocked, touched Sion again, threaten her again, even think about her again, and I will destroy you. I have evidence of your embezzlement, enough to send you to prison. Back off or I go to the police. Sung Ho's confidence cracked. "You wouldn't. Father would never forgive you." Dongmin laughed bitterly. Father's forgiveness stopped mattering when he chose control over his son's happiness. "I'm done playing family politics. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to return every cent you stole. You're going to publicly apologize for the sabotage. And you're going to tell Veronica that if she comes near Sion, I'll ruin both of you so completely, you'll never recover. Do we understand each other?" Sung Ho nodded slowly, tasting blood. Dongmin left feeling no satisfaction, only emptiness. He'd won this battle, but without Sion, it meant nothing. Veronica, however, didn't get the message in time, or maybe she was too obsessed to care. She'd tracked Sion to Richmond, hiring a private investigator to follow her. When she learned about the pregnancy test purchase, she saw an opportunity. If Dongmin knew Sion was carrying his child, he'd never let her go. But if something happened to the baby, Tion would be too devastated to stay in Philadelphia. Veronica's grip on reality had slipped completely. She convinced herself she was doing Dongmin a favor, saving him from being trapped by a woman using pregnancy to keep him. Tion had decided to tell Dongmin about the baby. She couldn't keep something this important from him, regardless of their relationship status. He deserved to know he was going to be a father. She'd planned to call him that evening after her first prenatal appointment. She was walking back from the clinic, lost in thought about how to start the conversation, when a car suddenly swerved toward the sidewalk. Tion barely had time to jump back, but the car clipped her hip, sending her spinning to the ground. Pain exploded through her body as she hit the pavement hard. Through the shock, she saw the car speed away, but not before she recognized the driver. Veronica. Lebna found her 30 minutes later, alerted by a neighbor who'd seen the accident. Tion was conscious but bleeding, clutching her stomach and crying. "The baby. Please, the baby." The ambulance ride was a blur of pain and fear. At the hospital, a kind doctor examined her while Lebna held her hand. "You have a concussion and some bad bruising, but you're going to be fine. And your baby," the doctor smiled. "Your baby is perfectly safe. Strong heartbeat, everything looks good. You were lucky." Tion sobbed with relief, but then the reality hit her. Veronica had tried to hurt her baby. This wasn't just relationship drama anymore. This was dangerous. Lebna made the call Tion was too shaken to make. "Dongmin? It's Lebna. You need to get to Richmond Regional Hospital right now. Tion was in an accident. She's okay, but you need to come." She hung up before he could ask questions. In Philadelphia, Dongmin's heart stopped. He was in his car within minutes, making the 2-hour drive in 90 minutes, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. Tion was hurt. Nothing else mattered. Not their fight, not the separation, nothing. He needed to see her, to hold her, to know she was really okay. He burst into her hospital room like a storm. Tion was sitting up in bed, a bandage on her forehead, bruises already forming on her arms. When she saw him, Everything she'd been holding back broke. Dongmin. His name came out as a sob, and then he was there, gathering her carefully into his arms, mindful of her injuries. I'm here. I've got you. You're safe. He pressed kisses to her hair, her face, anywhere he could reach. What happened? Lebna said an accident, but Xian pulled back to look at him. It wasn't an accident. It was Veronica. She tried to hit me with her car. The color drained from Dongmin's face, replaced by a rage so intense it scared them both. She what? His voice was deadly quiet. I'm calling the police right now. She's going to prison for attempted murder. But Xian grabbed his hand. There's something else you need to know. Something important. She took a deep breath, terrified and hopeful. Dongmin, I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. For a moment, he just stared at her, processing. Then his expression transformed, cycling through shock, joy, fear, and fierce protectiveness. A baby. We're having a baby. He cupped her face gently. When did you find out? 4 days ago. I was going to tell you tonight. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I didn't trust us enough to fight through the hard parts. I was so scared of ruining your life that I almost lost what matters most. Dongmin kissed her softly, carefully. You could never ruin my life. You are my life. You and this baby, you're everything. And I swear to you, on everything I am, I will protect you both. Veronica, my family, anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first. The police came to take Xian's statement. She described the incident, identified Veronica, and they issued a warrant for her arrest. But Veronica had fled. Sung-ho, trying to save himself, told police she'd left the country, probably back to her family's estate in France. We'll work with international authorities, the detective promised. She'll face justice. But the damage was done. The threat against Xian and their baby was real, and Dongmin wouldn't rest until Veronica was locked up, or at least far enough away to never threaten them again. That night, Dongmin stayed in the hospital chair beside Xian's bed, holding her hand while she slept. The doctor wanted to keep her overnight for observation. In the quiet darkness, Dongmin let himself feel everything he'd been holding back. Fear that he'd lost her, relief that she was okay, wonder that they'd created a life together, and underneath it all, a bone-deep determination. He'd failed to protect her from his toxic world, but that ended now. He was going to burn down anyone and anything that threatened his family. Ji-Yan arrived at the hospital the next morning. Lebna had called her, figuring the woman had a right to know about her grandchild even if she'd been cruel to Xian. Dongmin tensed when his mother walked in, moving protectively closer to Xian, but Ji-Yan's expression wasn't cold anymore. It was shaken. I heard what Veronica did. Dongmin, I had no idea she was capable of such violence. If I'd known... She stopped, looking at Xian with something that might have been shame. I owe you an apology. Several, actually. I let fear make me cruel. Fear that my son was making a mistake. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. But watching him these past weeks, seeing how hollow he became without you, I realized the only mistake would be losing you. Xian didn't know what to say. Ji-Yan stepped closer. May I? She gestured to the chair. At Xian's nod, she sat down. I grew up in a world where marriages were arranged, where love was less important than family alliances. I married Chairman Park because our families decided it was appropriate. We grew to care for each other, but it was never the passionate love you see in movies. I convinced myself that was normal, that romance was foolish. But seeing what you and my son have, how you'd both rather lose everything than lose each other, it made me realize what I missed. What I never had. She reached out hesitantly and took Xian's hand. I'm going to be a grandmother, and I want to know my grandchild. I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me. I know I don't deserve it after how I've treated you, but I'm asking anyway." Xian looked at Dong Min, who seemed as stunned as she felt. "I appreciate your apology," Xian said carefully, "and I believe people can change, but it's going to take time for me to trust that this isn't another manipulation." Ji Yan nodded. "I understand. I'll earn your trust, however long it takes. Starting now." She pulled out her phone and made a call. "Husband, it's time we talked. Meet me at the hospital." "Yes, now. Because your son's girlfriend, the woman carrying your grandchild, was nearly killed by the psychopath you and Sung Ho were working with. And if you ever want to meet this baby, you need to make some changes immediately." She hung up, looking satisfied. "He'll be here within the hour. And he'll listen, or he'll lose his entire family." Chairman Park arrived looking furious, but that fury faded when he saw Xian's injuries, saw his wife's fierce expression, and heard the full story of Veronica's attack. For the first time in weeks, Dong Min saw his father truly shaken. "I didn't know she would go this far. I thought—" He stopped, seeming to realize how pathetic the excuse sounded. "I thought I was protecting the family name. Instead, I drove away my son and endangered an innocent woman and my grandchild. I've been a fool." He looked at Dong Min. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to make this right. Tell me what you need." "Public support," Dong Min said immediately. "I want you to announce to the board, to the family, to everyone, that Xian is my partner and the mother of your grandchild. I want you to make it clear that anyone who disrespects her disrespects you. I want you to stop Sung Ho's sabotage and make him face consequences for his embezzlement. And I want my trust fund and position in the company restored, not because I care about the money, but because I earned them." He took Tian's hand. "Most importantly, I want you to welcome Qian into this family genuinely. No more games, no more tests. She's mine, and I'm hers, and our child deserves grandparents who love them unconditionally." Chairman Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something Dong Min had never seen. He bowed, a deep formal bow of respect and apology. "You have it all. Every requirement. I will spend the rest of my life making up for how I've treated both of you." He straightened. "And Sung Ho will face the authorities for his crimes. I've protected him too long. Let him become a monster. That ends today." It wasn't everything. Trust wouldn't rebuild overnight. But it was a start. And Xian saw hope bloom on Dong Min's face for the first time in weeks. Xian was released from the hospital that afternoon with instructions to rest. Dong Min brought her back to Richmond, respecting that she needed recovery time away from Philadelphia's chaos. But now he stayed with her, and they spent the next week reconnecting, healing both physically and emotionally. They talked about the baby, about their future, about how to build a life together, despite everything working against them. "We're going to be parents," Xian said one evening, still marveling at the reality. "Are you scared?" Dong Min admitted. "Terrified, but also excited. We're going to be good at this, better than our parents were." They made love carefully that week, Dong Min treating her like she was made of glass, until Xian laughingly told him she wasn't that fragile. Afterward, lying tangled together, Dong Min's hand on her stomach where their baby grew, Xian felt peace for the first time in months. "I love you," she whispered. "I never stopped. Even when I left. I was just so scared." Dong Min kissed her temple. "I know. And I love you. We're going to get through this. Together. No more running. No more letting other people drive wedges between us. It's you and me against the world if necessary." Xian smiled. "You and me and baby makes 3. His answering smile was brilliant, and she knew they were going to be okay. But Veronica was still out there. And Sung Ho, facing prison time, was desperate. The battle wasn't over. In fact, it was about to get much worse. 3 weeks after the hospital, Xian and Dong Min returned to Philadelphia together. This time, everything was different. Chairman Park had made good on his promises. At a company-wide meeting, he announced that Dong-min was promoted to president and CEO, and that Xian would be joining as chief strategy officer after the baby was born. More importantly, he introduced Xian as his future daughter-in-law and publicly apologized for his previous behavior. The room erupted in shocked whispers, but nobody dared object. The message was clear. Xian was family now, and the Park Patriarch's word was law. Sung-ho watched from the back of the room, his face twisted with hatred. He'd been demoted to a junior position, his embezzlement exposed to the board, though Chairman Park had kept it from going public to avoid scandal. His accounts were frozen, his privileges revoked. But what enraged him most was watching Dong-min win everything. The company, the family's approval, and Xian. It wasn't fair. Sung-ho had worked just as hard, been just as loyal, but he'd always been the spare, the backup son. Now he was nothing, and someone was going to pay. Xian moved back into Dong-min's apartment, but this time they made it theirs. She hung photos from Eritrea, added colorful textiles, and warmth to the cold, modern space. Dong-min loved watching her nest, preparing for their baby. At 3 months pregnant, she was starting to show, a small bump that he couldn't stop touching. They went to doctor's appointments together, heard their baby's heartbeat, and cried together at the first ultrasound. "It's real," Xian whispered, staring at the tiny form on the screen. "We made a person." Dong-min squeezed her hand, overwhelmed with love for both of them. But work presented new challenges. While Chairman Park supported them, many executives and employees didn't. They saw Xian as an outsider who'd seduced her way to the top. Her ideas in meetings were questioned more harshly than anyone else's. Her decisions were second-guessed. People went around her to Dong-min, undermining her authority. It was exhausting and frustrating, but Xian refused to quit. She'd earned her position, and she was going to prove herself. Dong-min watched her navigate the hostility with grace and intelligence, falling more in love every day. One particular project became Xian's proving ground. The company was negotiating a major merger with a tech firm, but the deal was falling apart over cultural concerns and logistics. Xian spent weeks analyzing the situation, meeting with both sides, finding creative solutions everyone had missed. She proposed a restructuring plan that addressed every major objection while maximizing profit for both companies. When she presented it to the board, there was stunned silence. Then applause. Even the executives who'd been most hostile had to admit it was brilliant. "You were incredible," Dong-min told her that night, kissing her breathless in his office after everyone had left. His hands roamed over her body, careful of her growing belly. "Watching you command that room, knowing you're carrying my baby, I've never wanted you more." Xian laughed, pulling him closer. "Then do something about it." They made love right there, urgent and passionate, celebrating her victory and their love. Afterward, straightening their clothes, they grinned at each other like teenagers. "We can't keep doing this at work," Daejeon said without conviction. "Absolutely not," Dong-min agreed, already planning the next time. But their happiness was threatened from an unexpected direction. Haiwan, furious that her manipulation hadn't worked, started spreading rumors. She told people that the baby might not be Dong-min's, that Xian had been seeing other men. The lies were absurd, easily disproven, but they still hurt. When Dong-min heard what Haiwan was saying, his fury was cold and calculated. He called her to his office. "You have two choices. Publicly retract every lie you've told and apologize to Xian, or I'll sue you for slander and ensure you never work in this city again. What's it going to be?" Haiwan's mask of friendly concern finally shattered. "She doesn't deserve you. I've loved you since we were children, Dong-min. I was supposed to be the one carrying your baby, wearing your ring. But you threw it all away for some African secretary who doesn't even understand our world." Her voice rose hysterically. "I tried to help you see reason, I tried to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Why can't you see that? Dongmin looked at her with something close to pity. Because it's not a mistake. Xian is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And you, Haiwan? You were never even a consideration. I don't love you. I never did. You need help. Professional help. But you need to stay away from us. Haiwan left his office in tears, but not before throwing one last barb. You'll regret this. When she leaves you, when reality sets in, and she realizes she can't handle your world, you'll regret pushing me away. Dongmin didn't dignify that with a response, but later, holding Tian in bed, he found himself thinking about Haiwan's words, not because he believed them, but because they highlighted the pressure Tian was under. Are you happy? He asked quietly. Truly happy. Because if this life is too much, if the constant battles are wearing you down, we can leave. Start over somewhere else. Zion turned to face him, her hand covering his where it rested on her stomach. I'm happy. Exhausted sometimes, frustrated often, but happy. Because I'm with you. Because we're building something real. She kissed him softly. I won't pretend it's easy. Your world is harsh, and people are cruel, but I'm tougher than they think. My mother raised me to bend, but never break. I can handle this, Dongmin, as long as we face it together. He pulled her close, breathing in her scent, letting her strength flow into him. They were going to make this work. They had to. The merger Xian had saved became a massive success. The tech company's CEO personally thanked her, and industry publications wrote articles praising her innovative approach. Overnight, Xian went from being seen as Dongmin's questionable girlfriend to being recognized as a legitimate business mind. Job offers poured in from competitors, all offering substantial salaries and positions. She turned them all down, loyal to the company and to Dongmin. But the offers proved her worth, silencing many critics. Chairman Park, true to his word, had been working on changing family dynamics. He arranged a family dinner at the main estate, insisting everyone attend. Ji Yan had been visiting Xian weekly, bringing baby gifts and slowly building a real relationship. She'd shared stories about Dongmin's childhood, about her own struggles in the Park family, creating bonds of understanding. Now she stood beside Xian at the formal dinner, a united front. Extended family members who'd been coldest toward Xian were noticeably warmer, reading the shift in power correctly. But Sung Ho's absence was conspicuous. He'd been invited, but hadn't shown. Chairman Park's expression was grim. My youngest son has become someone I don't recognize. I take responsibility for that. I enabled his worst traits, protected him from consequences, and created a monster. He looked at Dongmin and Xian. I'm working with authorities to ensure he faces appropriate punishment for his crimes. But I want you both to be careful. Desperate people do desperate things, and Sung Ho is very desperate right now. The warning sent chills down Xian's spine. She'd already been attacked once. Would Sung Ho come after them too? Security was increased around their apartment and offices. Bodyguards were assigned, though Dongmin tried to be subtle about it. Xian hated feeling like a prisoner, but she understood the necessity. At 5 months pregnant, she was vulnerable in ways she'd never been before. The baby kicked for the first time during a board meeting, and Xian gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. Dongmin was beside her immediately. What's wrong? His face was pale with fear. She laughed, taking his hand and placing it where she'd felt the movement. Feel that. That's our baby saying hello. Dongmin's expression transformed into wonder as a tiny foot pushed against his palm. They found out they were having a girl. In the doctor's office, seeing the ultrasound confirm the sex, both of them cried. A daughter, Dongmin whispered reverently. We're having a daughter. Xian watched emotions play across his face. Joy, fear, fierce protectiveness. She's going to have you wrapped around her tiny finger, Xian teased. Absolutely, he agreed without shame. She's going to be spoiled rotten and loved beyond measure. They left the appointment glowing, stopping to buy entirely too many pink outfits. For a few hours, they were just excited parents-to-be, the outside world forgotten. But Sung-ho was planning his revenge. He'd found an ally in Veronica, who'd secretly returned to the US, despite the warrant. Together, they plotted something that would destroy Dong-min and Taeyeon's happiness completely. They studied schedules, bribed security guards, and waited for the perfect opportunity. It came when Seon had to travel to Atlanta for a site visit at the company's southern branch. Dong-min wanted to go with her, but he had meetings he couldn't cancel. "I'll be fine," Seon assured him. "It's one night, and I'll have security with me the whole time." Reluctantly, he agreed. Seon arrived in Atlanta and checked into her hotel. The site visit went well, and she spent the evening reviewing reports in her room. Around midnight, there was a knock on her door. Thinking it was room service with the tea she'd ordered, Seon opened it without checking. Sung-ho pushed his way in, followed by Veronica. Seon's scream was cut off by Veronica's hand over her mouth. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," Sung-ho said, pulling out a syringe. "We're just going to have a little trip together. Time for you to disappear so my brother can get his life back." Terror flooded Seon. She fought, but she was pregnant and outnumbered. Sung-ho grabbed her arms while Veronica tried to inject her with something. Seon kicked hard, connecting with Veronica's stomach. The woman stumbled back, and Seon used the moment to break free, running for the door. She almost made it before Sung-ho tackled her. They hit the floor hard, and Taeyeon felt sharp pain in her abdomen. "No!" she screamed. "The baby!" Sung-ho froze, reality seeming to penetrate his rage. He looked at his hands holding her down, at her terrified face, and something shifted in his expression. Horror. He stumbled back. I wasn't trying to hurt the baby. I just wanted..." But Veronica had no such hesitation. She raised the syringe again. That's when Seon's security guard burst through the door, having heard the commotion. He tackled Veronica, restraining her, while Sung-ho just stood there, stunned. Police arrived within minutes, having been called by hotel staff. Seon was rushed to the hospital, pain radiating through her body, crying and praying that her baby was okay. "Please," she begged the paramedics. "Please save my baby." Dong-min got the call, and his world stopped. He chartered a private plane, making the hour flight to Atlanta, while on the phone with the hospital, the police, anyone who could tell him what was happening. When he finally reached the hospital, Taeyeon was in emergency surgery. A placental abruption, the doctor explained. The trauma from the fall had caused the placenta to separate from her uterus. They were doing an emergency cesarean to save the baby, even though Taeyeon was only 24 weeks along. "It's too early," the doctor said gently. "The baby's chances aren't good. We're doing everything we can." Dong-min waited in agony. His brother had done this. His own blood had put Seon and their daughter in mortal danger. If either of them died, he would never forgive himself for letting Seon go to Atlanta alone, for not protecting them. Hours crawled by. Finally, a doctor emerged. "Your daughter is alive. She's very small, only 1 pound, and she'll need to stay in the NICU for months, but she's a fighter. And Seon is stable. The surgery went well. You can see her soon." Dong-min collapsed into a chair, sobbing with relief and residual terror. 1 pound. His daughter was 1 pound, fighting for life because of his family's cruelty. Seon woke up in the hospital feeling empty. Her hands went immediately to her stomach, finding it flat, and panic seized her. "My baby. Where's my baby?" A nurse appeared beside her. "Your daughter is alive. She's in the NICU. You had to have an emergency C-section, but both of you made it through. You're going to be okay." Relief and fear warred in Taeyeon's chest. "I want to see her. Please, I need to see her." The nurse smiled kindly. "Let me check with the doctor. Your partner is here too. He's been waiting for you to wake up." Moments later, Dong-min was there, holding her hand. tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he choked out. "This is my fault. My family, my brother. I should have protected you better. I should have—" Sion squeezed his hand. "Stop. This isn't your fault. Sung-ho and Veronica did this, not you." But she could see the guilt eating him alive. A doctor came in, explaining Sion's condition and recovery. Then, when she was stable enough, they wheeled her bed to the NICU so she could see her daughter. Nothing prepared Sion for the sight. Her baby was so tiny, covered in wires and tubes, fighting for every breath in an incubator. She was perfect and terrifying. "She doesn't have a name yet," the nurse said softly. "Would you like to name her?" Sion looked at Dong-min through tears. They'd planned to wait until she was born to decide. "Amara," Sion whispered. "It means grace, and she's going to need all the grace in the world to survive this." Dong-min nodded, touching the incubator gently. "Amara Park, our little fighter." They stayed there for hours, talking to their daughter, telling her to be strong, that they loved her. The NICU doctor was honest about her chances. "The next 72 hours are critical. She's at high risk for brain bleeds, lung damage, infections. I won't lie to you. It's going to be a long, scary road. But premature babies surprise us every day." Sung-ho and Veronica were arrested. The charges were serious: kidnapping, assault, attempted murder. Both were denied bail, deemed flight risks. Chairman Park came to Atlanta, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. He stood outside the NICU, staring at his granddaughter through the glass, his face carved with grief and guilt. "I did this," he said quietly to Dong-min. "I created the environment that turned Sung-ho into this. I prioritized pride over people, control over love. That little girl fighting for her life is paying the price for my mistakes." His voice broke. "I am so sorry. To you, to Sion, to Amara. I failed all of you." Dong-min wanted to rage at his father, to blame him for everything. But he was too exhausted, too scared. "Just be better going forward. That's all we can ask." Chairman Park nodded. "I've already started. I've cut Sung-ho off completely. No lawyers paid for by the family, no support. He'll face the full consequences of his actions. And I'm stepping down as chairman. The company is yours now, Dong-min. Lead it better than I did. Make it something to be proud of." It was a seismic shift, but Dong-min couldn't focus on business. His entire world had narrowed to Sion and Amara. Nothing else mattered. Ji-yeon arrived the next day, bringing Sion's family. She'd arranged for them to fly from Eritrea, knowing Sion needed her mother. When Sion saw her mama walk into the hospital room, she broke down completely. Her mother held her, speaking softly in Tigrinya, providing comfort only a mother could give. "You are strong, daughter. Stronger than you know. And your baby, she has that strength in her. She will survive this." Sion wanted to believe it, but every time alarms beeped in the NICU, every time doctors rushed to Amara's incubator, her heart stopped. The first 72 hours passed in a blur of fear, but Amara held on. She was stable, the doctors said cautiously. Not out of danger by any means, but holding her own. Sion pumped breast milk every 3 hours, the only thing she could do for her daughter, who was too small to nurse. Dong-min brought the milk to the NICU, watching nurses feed Amara through a tiny tube. He'd never felt so helpless. This wasn't a business problem he could solve with strategy. This was life and death, out of his control entirely. All he could do was be there, for both his girls, and pray. Weeks passed in the NICU. Some days were good, with Amara gaining a few grams and breathing easier. Other days were terrifying, with infections or breathing crises that required immediate intervention. Sion barely left the hospital, sleeping in a chair by the incubator. Dong-min split his time between the hospital and work, trying to keep the company running, while his personal life was in crisis. They were both exhausted, running on coffee and fear. But they were together, and slowly, Amara was growing stronger. At 2 pounds, then 3, she started to look less fragile. The day they got to hold her for the first time was transformative. Xian sat in a rocking chair, while a nurse carefully placed Amara on her chest for skin-to-skin contact. The baby was still covered in wires, still needed oxygen support, but she was in Xian's arms, real and warm and alive. Xian cried, talking to her daughter, telling her about her heritage, about the family waiting for her, about how loved she was. Dongmin watched, his heart so full it hurt. When it was his turn to hold her, he was terrified of hurting her. But the nurse guided him. Amara settled against his chest, and Dongmin was lost. This tiny person owned him completely. "We're going to be okay," Xian said that night, the first time either had said it and believed it. They were in Xian's hospital room, Amara stable enough that they could step away for a few hours. "All 3 of us. We're going to make it through this." Dongmin pulled her into his arms. "I know. And when we do, when Amara comes home, I want us to get married. Not a big wedding, just us and our families, making it official. I want you to be my wife, Xian. I want our daughter to grow up seeing her parents committed to each other. What do you say?" Xian's answer was to kiss him, deep and sure. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. The trial for Sung Ho and Veronica was mercifully quick. The evidence was overwhelming, and both accepted plea deals to avoid life sentences. Sung Ho got 15 years for kidnapping and assault. Veronica got 20 for her previous attack, plus the kidnapping. At sentencing, Sung Ho addressed the court. "I want to apologize to my brother and Xian. I let jealousy poison me. I became something I'm ashamed of. There's no excuse for what I did. I hope someday you can forgive me, though I don't deserve it." Dongmin sat in the courtroom, holding Xian's hand, and felt nothing. His brother was a stranger. The only family that mattered was the one he'd built with Xian. After 2 months in the NICU, Amara was finally strong enough to go home. She weighed 5 pounds, a huge milestone. She still needed oxygen support and careful monitoring, but she could leave the hospital. Xian and Dongmin brought her to their apartment, which they'd prepared with every safety measure imaginable. That first night, taking turns watching her sleep in the bassinet beside their bed, they marveled at the miracle of her existence. "We made her," Xian whispered. "This perfect little person." Dongmin kissed his daughter's tiny forehead. "She's going to be amazing. Strong like her mother, stubborn like her father." Life settled into a new rhythm. Feedings every 3 hours, doctor appointments, monitoring equipment. Exhausting, but joyful. Xian took maternity leave, focusing entirely on Amara. Dongmin worked from home as much as possible, unwilling to miss a moment. They were sleep-deprived and stressed, but they'd never been happier. Ji-Yan visited often, proving herself a devoted grandmother. Chairman Park, now just father to them, came weekly with gifts and stories. He was different now, humbled and genuine. The family that had once rejected Xian now embraced her completely. 6 months after Amara's traumatic birth, she was thriving. She'd caught up developmentally, was off oxygen, and had the brightest smile. The doctors called her a miracle baby, and Dongmin and Xian agreed. They planned a small wedding for the following month, ready to make their commitment official. One evening, Dongmin was playing with Amara on the floor while Xian cooked dinner, and he felt overwhelming gratitude. Everything they'd been through, all the pain and fighting, had led to this moment. Their daughter giggling as he made silly faces, the woman he loved humming in the kitchen, the smell of home cooking filling their apartment. This was happiness. This was everything. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright, a perfect October day in Philadelphia. Xian stood in her childhood bedroom at her mother's house, where she'd been getting ready with her family and Lebna. Her wedding dress was a blend of traditional Eritrean design and modern elegance, white silk with gold embroidery, reflecting both her heritage and her new life. Her mother fastened a traditional Habesha Kimi's necklace around her neck, tears in her eyes. "Your father would be so proud. You've built a beautiful life here, daughter, against all odds." Sion hugged her mama, careful not to wrinkle the dress. Her father had passed 2 years ago, but she felt his presence today. At the venue, a historic estate outside the city, Dongmin was equally nervous. He wore a traditional Korean hanbok for the ceremony, honoring his heritage, as Taezeon was honoring hers. His best friend from college, someone who'd remained loyal through all the family drama, stood beside him as best man. "You ready for this?" his friend asked. Dongmin smiled, thinking of Sion and Amara. "I've been ready since the moment she walked into that gala. Everything else was just getting here." His mother appeared, adjusting his collar. "Your father wanted me to give you this." She handed him a letter. Dongmin opened it to find his father's blessing, written in careful script. The ceremony itself was beautiful and unique, blending Korean and Eritrean traditions. Sion's uncle walked her down the aisle since her father couldn't, and when Dongmin saw her, he forgot how to breathe. She was stunning, radiant, everything he'd ever wanted. Their vows were personal and heartfelt. Sion promised to stand beside him through every challenge, to build a life filled with love and laughter, to raise their daughter with strength and grace. Dongmin promised to honor her always, to see her as his equal in all things, to create a home where their family could thrive. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was met with cheers and applause. The reception mixed both cultures beautifully. Korean barbecue stations stood alongside Eritrean injera and stews. Traditional music from both countries played. Guests from 2 different worlds mingled, united in celebrating this union. Chairman Park gave a speech that had people crying. "I almost destroyed what my son had found, because I was afraid of change, afraid of losing control. But Sion taught me that love doesn't diminish us, it expands us. She brought light into my son's life and gave us a granddaughter who has healed wounds I didn't know we had. I'm honored to call her my daughter." He raised his glass. "To Dongmin and Sion, may your marriage be filled with the courage you've already shown." Ji-yeon carried Amara, who was now 9 months old, and happily babbling at everyone. The baby wore a tiny hanbok that matched her father's, and every guest took turns cooing over her. During the couple's first dance, Dongmin held Sion close and whispered, "This is everything I never knew I needed. You, Amara, this life we've built. Thank you for not giving up on us." Sion smiled against his chest. "Thank you for fighting for us when I was too scared to fight for myself. We make a good team, Mr. Park." He laughed. "We make a perfect team, Mrs. Park." Later, as the party continued, Sion's mother pulled her aside. "I have something for you. Your grandmother gave it to me when I married your father, and now I pass it to you." She placed a delicate gold bracelet on Sion's wrist. "This has been in our family for 4 generations. It represents the strength of the women who wore it, the love they built, the challenges they overcame. You've honored that tradition. Wear it, and remember where you come from." Sion touched the bracelet, feeling the weight of history and blessing. "I will, Mama, and someday I'll give it to Amara." The speeches continued. Lebna, as maid of honor, told embarrassing stories about Sion's early days in America, her terrible first apartment, her determination to succeed. "I watched this woman build herself from nothing. She came here alone and created a life through sheer willpower. When Dongmin came into the picture, I was skeptical. Rich men don't usually see women like us as equals. But he proved me wrong. He sees her exactly as she is. Brilliant, strong, incredible. That's why I knew they'd make it." Dongmin's friend spoke about watching him come alive over the past year, becoming the man he was always meant to be. Love changed him. Sion and Amara changed him, and we're all better for it. As evening fell, Fairy lights twinkled across the venue. Dongmin and Taeyeon stood on a balcony, watching their families and friends celebrate below. "Did you ever imagine this?" Taeyeon asked. "That day at the gala when everything started. Did you think we'd end up here?" Dongmin pulled her close. "Honestly? No. I thought maybe a few dates. Some fun. I didn't expect to fall completely in love. I didn't expect you to become my entire world." He turned her to face him. "But I'm so glad you are. Every hard moment, every battle we fought, it was worth it to get here." They rejoined the party for the last dance, holding Amara between them as they swayed. Their daughter's giggles mixed with the music, and around them, people snapped photos of the perfect family moment. But the real perfection was in the look Dongmin and Daeyeon shared over their daughter's head. Understanding, love, partnership. They'd been tested by fire and emerged stronger. Whatever came next, they'd face together. The honeymoon was in Eritrea, Dongmin's first visit to his wife's homeland. Xian showed him where she grew up, introduced him to extended family, took him to markets and churches and the places that shaped her. He fell in love with the country's beauty and its people's warmth. Amara charmed everyone, and Xian's family embraced Dongmin completely. "You've given our daughter a good life," Xian's uncle told him. "You've honored her and her heritage. That's all we ever wanted." Dongmin felt humbled by their acceptance. One evening, they stood on a hill overlooking Asmara at sunset, Amara asleep in a carrier on Dongmin's chest. "Thank you for bringing me here," he said, "for sharing this part of yourself. I understand you better now." Xian leaned against him. "You're part of my story now. Every part. I wanted you to see where I come from, what made me who I am." They watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in oranges and purples. In that moment, surrounded by Xian's history and heritage, Dongmin felt completely at peace. He'd found home, not in a place, but in the people beside him. When they returned to Philadelphia, it was to new beginnings. Dongmin had restructured the company, promoting based on merit and creating a more inclusive culture. Sion's consulting division was thriving, and she'd been featured in several business magazines as an innovator in corporate strategy. But more importantly, their home life was settled and happy. Amara was walking now, getting into everything, keeping them both entertained and exhausted. They'd moved to a larger apartment with space for her to play, and room for the family they hoped to expand someday. Ji-yeon and Chairman Park were regular visitors, doting grandparents who'd learned from their mistakes. The elder Parks had even started a foundation in Amara's name, supporting premature babies and their families. "We can't undo our past failures," Chairman Park told Dongmin, "but we can try to make the future better." Dongmin appreciated the gesture, and more importantly, he appreciated his parents' genuine transformation. They'd moved from controlling to supportive, from judgmental to accepting. It had taken nearly losing everything for them to change, but they had changed. One evening, after putting Amara to bed, Dongmin found Xian in their bedroom, holding the gold bracelet her mother had given her at the wedding. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her on the bed. She smiled. "About how far we've come, about how blessed we are, about how none of this would have happened if I hadn't walked into that gala, or if you hadn't actually seen me." She turned to him. "Do you ever think about that night? How everything could have gone differently?" Dongmin pulled her into his arms. "All the time. And every time I'm grateful it went the way it did." 2 years after the wedding, life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Amara was 3 years old, bright and curious, speaking a mix of English, Korean, and Tigrinya that delighted everyone. Sion was pregnant again, this time with a healthy, full-term pregnancy that had none of the drama of the first. They'd found out they were having a boy, and Amara was excited about becoming a big sister. "I teach him everything," she declared with complete confidence. Dongmin and Sion exchanged amused glances. Their daughter had inherited her mother's determination and her father's stubbornness in equal measure. The company continued to thrive under Dongmin's leadership. He'd transformed it from a traditional, hierarchical corporation into something more modern and ethical. Sion's division had expanded internationally, and she was recognized as one of the top strategic minds in the industry. But they'd also learned to balance work and family, making sure that success in business didn't come at the cost of time with their children. They had family dinners every night, weekends reserved for Amara, and date nights twice a month where they reconnected as a couple, not just parents. Chairman Park had passed away 6 months earlier, peacefully in his sleep. His death had been sad, but not tragic. He'd lived long enough to see his son happy, to meet both grandchildren, and to make amends for his mistakes. At the funeral, Dongmin had eulogized his father honestly, talking about both his flaws and his growth. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes that hurt people I love. But he learned. He changed. And in the end, he showed me that it's never too late to become better. Ji-yeon had squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. She'd moved closer to them after her husband's death, becoming an integral part of their daily lives. One Saturday morning, Dongmin woke to find Sion already up, standing on the balcony of their new house in the suburbs. They'd bought it 6 months ago, wanting space for their growing family and a yard where the children could play. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her round belly. "What are you doing up so early?" he murmured into her hair. She leaned back against him. "Just thinking. Remembering. 5 years ago, I was a secretary who thought my life would never change. Now I'm here, married to you, about to have our second child, running my own division. Sometimes it feels like a dream." "It's real," Dongmin assured her. "Every beautiful, messy, perfect bit of it." Their son kicked, making them both laugh. "He's active this morning," Sion said. They'd decided to name him Mateo, honoring Sion's childhood friend, who died when they were young. It felt right to give their son a name that connected him to his mother's past. "I can't wait to meet him," Dongmin said, "though I'm terrified of having 2 kids. Amara alone keeps us on our toes." Sion laughed. "We'll figure it out. We always do." Mateo was born on a sunny spring morning, healthy and perfect. Unlike Amara's traumatic entry into the world, this birth was smooth. Dongmin was in the delivery room, holding Sion's hand, watching in awe as his son emerged, crying and strong. When the doctor placed Mateo on Sion's chest, Dongmin felt the same overwhelming love he'd felt with Amara. This tiny person was part of them, a piece of their love made real. "He's beautiful," Sion whispered, exhausted but glowing. Dongmin kissed her forehead. "Just like his mother." Amara met her brother the next day, treating him with a mixture of curiosity and proprietary affection. "My baby," she declared, patting his head gently. "I protect him." Ji-yeon laughed, tears in her eyes. "You certainly will, sweetheart." The family gathered around the hospital bed, 3 generations united. Sion's mother had flown in from Eritrea, and together with Ji-yeon, the grandmothers cooed over the newest addition. Lebna arrived with balloons and inappropriate jokes that made everyone laugh. It was chaos and love, and everything a family should be. Bringing Mateo home was easier than it had been with Amara. They knew what they were doing now, had confidence born of experience. Still, adjusting to 2 children was challenging. Sleepless nights, juggling work and parenting, making sure Amara didn't feel neglected while caring for a newborn. But they made it work, supporting each other, asking for help when needed. Ji-yeon moved into their guest house, providing backup and wisdom. Sion's mother extended her stay, cooking meals and telling stories. It took a village, but they had one. 6 months after Mateo's birth, they threw a big party to celebrate his half-birthday and Amara's 4th. The house was full of people from both cultures, children running everywhere, laughter echoing. Dong-min stood in the kitchen, watching his wife dance with their daughter, while his son napped in a carrier on his chest. This was everything. Not the money, or the company, or the success. This. Family. Love. Belonging. He'd spent 30 years of his life searching for purpose, and found it in the most unexpected place. In a woman who'd walked into a party and changed everything. Sion caught his eye across the room and smiled. That same smile that had captured him 5 years ago. She made her way over, Amara clinging to her leg. "What are you thinking?" she asked, the same question she'd asked countless times before. Dong-min's answer was always the same and always true. That I'm the luckiest man alive, that I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone, that you saved me in every way a person can be saved. He kissed her softly. Thank you for taking a chance on me that night, for fighting through all the hard parts, for building this life with me. Sion touched his face tenderly. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did, for choosing love over everything else, for being the partner I never dared to dream I'd find. Amara tugged on both their hands. Mommy, Daddy, come play. They laughed and let her pull them toward the backyard, where other children were playing. Mateo woke up, making his presence known with a cry. Dong-min soothed him, while Tion organized a game for the kids. This was their forever. Messy, loud, beautiful, perfect. As the sun set on the party, guests slowly left until only family remained. They sat on the back porch, tired but happy, watching Amara chase fireflies while Mateo dozed. Do you remember when we thought your family would never accept this? Tion asked Ji-yeon. The older woman smiled. I remember being foolish enough to fight against what my son needed. I'm grateful you both had the strength I lacked. She looked at her grandchildren. They're going to grow up in a different world than we did. One where love matters more than tradition, where they can choose their own paths. That's the greatest gift you've given them. Late that night, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Dong-min and Sion finally had a moment alone. They stood in their bedroom, exhausted but content. I never want to forget this feeling, Sion said. This complete happiness. This sense that we're exactly where we're meant to be. Dong-min pulled her close. We won't, because every day we choose this. We choose each other, and as long as we keep doing that, we'll be okay. They kissed, slow and sweet, a promise and a celebration. Their forever had just begun, and it was going to be extraordinary. Years passed in a blur of school plays and business trips, skinned knees and promotions, bedtime stories, and board meetings. Amara grew into a confident girl who spoke 3 languages and wanted to be a doctor. Mateo was quieter, but equally determined, fascinated by building and creating. Dong-min and Sion navigated parenthood and careers, supporting each other through every challenge. They fought sometimes, disagreed often, but they never stopped choosing each other. Love wasn't always easy, but it was always worth it. On their 10th anniversary, they renewed their vows in a small ceremony with just family. Amara and Mateo stood with them, holding rings. You taught us what love looks like, Dong-min told his children. Not perfect or easy, but real and lasting. Your mother and I, we come from different worlds, but we built our own world together, and you're the best parts of it. Sion added, love means fighting for each other, especially when it's hard. Remember that. The kids nodded solemnly, not quite understanding but feeling the importance of the moment. Sion had published a book about her journey, From Invisible to Invaluable, Building a Life Against the Odds. It had become a bestseller, inspiring women around the world. She spoke at conferences, mentored young professionals, and used her platform to advocate for immigrants and outsiders trying to make their way. Dong-min was incredibly proud, watching her shine. You're changing lives, he told her, after one particularly moving speech. She smiled. "I'm just sharing what I learned. That you belong wherever you decide to belong. That your worth isn't determined by others' acceptance. That love and determination can overcome almost anything." Dongmin had his own successes. The company had tripled in value under his leadership, but more importantly, it had become known for ethical practices and employee support. He'd created programs for work-life balance, diversity initiatives, and community investment. Business magazines wrote about his innovative approach, but what mattered most to Dongmin was the culture he'd built. People were happy working there. They felt valued. That was the real success. One evening, watching his children play in the backyard while Xian worked on her laptop beside him, Dongmin reflected on the journey that had brought them here. The gala, where he'd first seen her, the fights with his family, Amara's traumatic birth, the wedding, all the moments that had tested and strengthened them. "We made it," he said aloud. Xian looked up, understanding immediately. "We did. Against all odds, we built something real and lasting." She closed her laptop and moved into his arms. "I love our life. I love you. I wouldn't change anything." Their story wasn't unique, but it was theirs. Two people from different worlds who found each other and refused to let go, despite every obstacle. They'd built a family, a home, a legacy. Their children would grow up knowing that love transcended borders and cultures, that determination could overcome prejudice. That family was what you made it. Dongmin and Xian's forever was just beginning, but it was already beautiful, filled with laughter and challenges, growth and joy, and most importantly, love that would never fade. As the sun set on another day, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Dongmin pulled Xian close and whispered, "Here's to forever, my love. To every day we get to choose each other." Xian smiled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling completely at peace. "To forever," she echoed. And in that moment, surrounded by the life they'd built, the children they'd raised, and the love they'd fought for, forever felt absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for joining us on Dongmin and Xian's incredible journey. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next romance tale. Drop a comment below telling us what you loved most about their story and where you're watching from. We love hearing from our viewers around the world.